Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my two fabulous co-hosts, Patricia Kirkman, PK, and George Lugo. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good, great.
Fabulous here. We had warm weather today, sunshine, and they're even talking about it being like 70 today.
I can only imagine. We still
I
have
know.
solid ice on my driveway.
I know, you're the ice queen.
I am. I'll tell you what. I slid down my driveway today. And I powered my way back up. It was very exciting.
Oh, wow. Lord.
So
but you look good.
I do look good. I do, yeah. I had to go out to look good, and now I can say I do. So that's very important. You can brave any element to make that happen. Right?
Attitude.
Well, I have to start the show, though, tonight thanking you, PK, and also giving a shout-out to Dwight and Rhonda Hull. And I will tell all of you why. My little dog, Gabriel, who I love with all my heart, actually ended up with some heart issues. And I was trapped here because of the ice storms and the ice on the roads, and I couldn't get to the vet. So, it got to the point where I was going to just walk down my mile-long driveway, but my husband said, don't even bother because you won't get down. It's that slick. So I had to treat little Gabriel myself, and my guess was it was a heart issue, but I wasn't certain. I called Dwight and Rhonda, and they've been on the show with us several times with their books about ghosts in the Wild West, and they're wonderful guests. They came on and talked about Jesse James and lots of other outlaws. Well, Dwight also does animal communication, so I asked Dwight, I said, would you please just check in with Gabriel and see if I'm on the right track, because I'm going to have to keep treating him myself until I can get out of here. So he did. He asked Gabriel. Gabriel said he felt a heaviness in his chest area. So Dwight said, yeah, I think it's heart. You're right. Keep doing what you're doing. So then, PK, you and I spoke, and you were saying how, according to the numbers, Gabriel would respond well to alternative treatment. Now, I didn't have access to traditional treatment. Alternative was all I had. So that was very encouraging, PK. So I was able to throw everything I had at him, and of course I have a little mini pharmacy here myself of alternative medicine, and it did improve his condition. So
Wonderful.
I finally got out of here. Finally went to the vet.
It's not many. I've seen it.
Oh, goodness. It was quite an adventure. We got down the ice-covered driveway and back up into the hill towns to another town that's even at a higher altitude. But the vet confirmed what Dwight said and what I thought. So he had been given the best of what I had until we could get him over to see the vet. So I just wanted to thank you, PK. That was so, so helpful. And Dwight and Rhonda, thank you very much again, because you all encouraged me to keep following that path, and it made a big difference. He did start to recover, and he's still with me, and it was touch and go. I think we all pulled him back from
that's great. I'll be seeing Dwight and wife in Tombstone in May at a show they're having there.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you're going to have to announce the date so that if people are in the area, they can stop by and see you.
particulars, yeah, it's going to be great to be there with them.
Yes, yes.
Looking
And George,
forward
you
to
were
it.
George, I just want to thank you as well because you called and several times to find out how Gabriel was doing, and that makes a difference when you're hanging on by your fingernails. So anyways, thank you all so much.
People care. That's important.
That's right. So PK, start us off, if you would, with the numbers. You have something interesting to tell us this week, as you do every week. What is it this time?
Firstly, it's a 5 universal day, so it's all about change. Don't expect anything to be normal, but there's a lot of changes going on, but it's high energy, good things happening. There's a luck factor that goes with the day. Those are always positive to feel good about, that's for sure, except if you're on the road driving. Pay attention to the speedometer, not just what you're doing on the outside, because tendency to drive too fast. But other than that, I was taking a look at things that are popping up because of our lovely guest tonight. And I took a look at a couple of the names that we usually use when we're looking at metaphysics, or I should say the spiritual side of things. And I looked at what the words represent, looking at them through the numbers. Ghost is a 7, 25-7, so it deals with changes, dealing with companionship, but it deals with spirits. I thought that was interesting to find that is what it comes down to with the number. It's the spirit. I took a look at mediumship. Yeah.
And last week you were talking about the number 7 coming around with those alien pulses from deep within another universe. So here we are back again, but from another side, the other side now.
Well, 7 deals with spirituality, teaching and learning, and the things that are really different. Because anything dealing with 7, it's a learning tool. And so isn't what we've talked about last week and what we're talking about today all about a learning tool?
Yes.
How to do it better?
That's right.
Yeah. So, and I took a look at the word mediumship, and that becomes a 45-9. So it's about all-encompassing of all aspects of things. So I thought, well, it's a good way to go. And the beginning of the name itself is also a 9. So it's looking at universal, all aspects, all beings. I think that was, to me, was a little bit of a surprise. So when I went to looking at the term for mediums, that represents the number 3, which is a communicator. And I thought, how apropos, isn't it?
Yes,
so
very.
The creative side going for that. And so we're looking at the different aspects of it. It really, I find it fascinating to see how these things always break down. Nothing new that we didn't expect, and yet it's validated. It's got its stamp of approval, shall we say, from the universe, or we realize the universe is stamping on it. But I think
my
it was
goodness.
So I just kind of thought I'd take a quick look at some of those things. And I think it's always nice when we take a look at how we feel about things. And this is a day of change, and some people that have a little strange feelings about how certain things respond to us, I think are going to have an opportunity to open up their mind to additional things as we listen to our guest tonight, because her book was quite interesting.
Yes, it was. And we have a wonderful guest tonight. We're going to introduce her in just a few minutes. But first I want to say, if you want your own numerology reading with Patricia Kirkman, you can go to patriciakirkman.com, or you can also find PK right on our website with supernaturalgirls.com. So very important to know all about the meaning of your name, your birth date. It's very helpful information. So be sure to contact PK for that. And George Lugo is our resident psychic medium at large, and you can find him at crystalgatereadings.com, crystalgatereadings.com. And George, you have a lot in common, I think, with our guest tonight, and we've got to hook you two up, and we're just going to sit back and listen to the conversation, I think, because we have a wonderful guest, Kitty Janusz, who has written a great book, and I love the title, When the Dead Speak. So she's going to be on in a minute, because this is just a great topic for all of us. We're very much entranced with the topic of mediumship and ghosts, and Kitty is also an investigator, so we're going to hear all about her adventures with that. And she has a beautiful quote in her book that I just wanted to read out loud to everybody in the audience. The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and where the other begins? Edgar Allan Poe. Great quote. So Kitty is an author, a psychic medium, a paranormal investigator. She's also trained in NLP, EFT, hypnotherapy, and she's also a Reiki Master. As an adult, Kitty began researching historic locations and conducting scientific paranormal investigations. It was this time during her early investigation she realized she also had a gift for capturing what is known as EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena. She was able to capture spirit voices through the use of digital recorders during every investigation. Well, we're going to hear more about this from Kitty herself. And before, Kitty, we go to you, I just wanted to say, for dream analysis, soul realignment readings, be sure to contact me, Patricia Baker. You can find me at supernaturalgirls.com. And one other thing, Itzhak Berry, who's been on our show a number of times, a great shaman, is leading a summit. I think it's in Ecuador this time, or the Andes. I'm not sure exactly where, but it's somewhere in South America. And it is open now that you can send in your application for review, and they'll review your application. And if you're a match for the rest of the team, you're going to be going. So that's on our website. That is on our Facebook page, along with a lot of great stories about UFOs, sightings, landings, the Pentagon, denying, admitting. It's all there.
Abductions.
So go take a look. Lots of great stuff on that. So we got to go and talk to the dead tonight, right? So here we are, and Kitty Janusz, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. Wonderful book. And if you could, just start us off with your early life. I guess you grew up with these things, huh?
Well, I kind of did, and the funny part is I just thought, as my sister and my brother did, that everybody had ghosts in their house because we didn't think it was something unusual. My parents bought the quintessential actual pink stucco house in about 1956, I think it was. Why anybody would buy a pink house, I do not know, but they bought the house new. They were the original owners of the house, and surrounding this tract was nothing basically but orange and lemon groves for as far as the eye could see. We were about 29 miles from downtown Los Angeles. And there was so little in between that house and Los Angeles that we actually had a pretty good view of what we call the Emerald City, the downtown Los Angeles. I mean, there was like just miles of orange and lemon groves in between us. And for whatever reason, our house seemed to be really active. And probably at least about once or twice a week, we would have some sort of, poltergeist or, paranormal activity going on in the house. Since I was, very, very young child, and most of it surrounded either my bedroom, the bathroom, and the connecting hallway would be the most active areas of the house. And I remember sitting in the bathroom staring at that door thinking, I've got to leave the bathroom, and I know there's going to be something in that hallway. And this would be in the middle of the day. And, you just had that presence when you walked out, that there was just something on the back of your neck just following you, just being very territorial about this little tiny 8-foot hallway. And you would just bolt out of the hallway. And everybody would. I would, my sister would, people who visited the house would. They did not like being in that hallway. We would hear footsteps going up and down, like boots on a wooden floor, but the hallway was carpeted. But you would just sit there and hear the clomp, 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 clomp. And I think what really led to my mindset that I have is because my parents did not discount it. They didn't really actively acknowledge it every single time, but they never said, oh, it's nothing, it's the wind, it's the cat, don't worry about it. they knew something was going on. They knew it was of a paranormal or supernatural nature, but they never said, ignore this. They never said, do not discount what is going on. And I really have to credit them for having an open mind. I didn't really say, I'm absolutely a believer at that point. We just knew something was going on in the house. And I thought it was just so cool because my friends would come over, as little kids, and they're like, you mean you don't have things falling over? You don't have boot steps clomping up and down the hallway all the time? They're like, no, this is scary. And I'm like, you guys are funny. So, I think just from an early childhood, just growing up with that, I just always had this level of comfort and acceptance that there was something not quite understood, but there was something that was always on the other side that would kind of come and visit. And I just, always thought that was really fascinating. But he would get a little annoying at times. It was, I think, a male spirit. Where he come from, I don't know, because my parents were the original owners of the house. He loved to move things that were green. And I always have this favorite story that I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and we were going to go to, I think, Disneyland the next day. And I had all my worldly treasures of about $7 in this green plastic pirate treasure chest, because doesn't every girl have a green plastic pirate treasure chest? They have all their money in. I don't know. So, I'd set it down on the table so I knew where it was, and we were going to go in the morning. And in the morning, to go to Disneyland, the chest was gone. Could not find it anywhere. Oh. We tore the house apart, and we finally found it perched up on the door of the refrigerator. Now, as a 7-year-old, I couldn't even reach the top of the refrigerator if I wanted to. Why would I put it up there? And this was, kind of an ongoing thing that things that were green would get moved, and we find them a day or so later in a really stupid place, usually up on door jambs, on top of the refrigerator, just odd places where you knew you wouldn't accidentally have set it down. We would come home and all the water in the house would be running. The shower, the faucets, everything would just be running full blast. And my parents would just say, now the water bill's going to be high. They would never say, oh my gosh, it's a ghost, or they would never discount it, which I just think was really a really neat thing, that they were acknowledging what was going on in the house, but let us reach our own decisions about exactly what that was. And
they didn't make a big deal out of it. They just kind of lived with it.
They didn't make a big deal out of it, and I think that's what I think a lot of people need to realize is you don't need to make a big deal out of if you see something, if you hear something. I have people emailing me all the time just terrified because I saw a dark shadow and I think I'm being possessed and is it demonic? And I'm like, just because it's a dark shadow, that's probably all the energy that they can muster to manifest, and that's all you're really seeing. I mean, it could be Aunt Bessie standing in front of you, and she just happens to appear as a dark shadow. I hear footsteps. I'm like, I have never heard in all my years of investigating that hearing footsteps is something that's really negative. Right. I mean, it's always something of a more benign nature. Don't worry if you hear footsteps. So I get these emails all the time from people who are just terrified, and I'm like, why are you terrified? Just because you're not sure what it is? I think you have to have more of a level of curiosity and wonder who is it and why are they there, kind of thing.
Well, and also I'm going to address this question to both you and George. I think the media has a lot to do with this because they try to make things even more frightening on television than it really is. And don't you think they're kind of leading the way so that people do freak out?
All the CGI that's being done and all that, just kind of, in fact, television is way more scary than in real life, So
that's more tick.
Yeah.
People ask you. People ask me if I've seen those scary movies like, Annabelle and Poltergeist and stuff. I'm like, no, because they're a little far from what real reality is, and I've pretty much seen scarier. Kitty would stretch it.
Did you? Was there ever any investigation to find out what was on the property that your house was built on, since the others in the neighborhood didn't have the same issues you did? Could there have been something in the ground itself?
The closest we could find was that about a block away that there was an old packing warehouse that had a railroad leading up to it. It was an orange packing house, and I found that railroad tracks and railroad lines tend to carry a lot of energy because it's very kinetic, it's very transient in their energy, and that's nobody else's house, or at least that they would admit. Let's put it that way. I'll bet a lot of houses in that area were active, and they just didn't want to talk about it because this was a generation that didn't want to broach that subject, I think. And I think I remember my parents kind of having whispered conversations with the other neighbors, and I think they probably really were discussing it and not bringing it, telling the kids about it because they didn't want to frighten us. But I think a few more houses in that neighborhood had some activity, and they just really didn't want to frighten the kids. And my parents just happened to be of like, it is what it is. Just come to your own conclusion of what it is. Yeah. But I think the other parents, I remember those little hushed conversations of what the heck is going on around here. But there's still orange and lemon groves here and there. But yeah, I think it might have just been a worker, or it might have been somebody at the warehouse. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I wrote more of a younger reader's book called Secrets Buried in the Lemon Grove that is kind of based on the actual paranormal events that happened at the house, and I kind of wove what I think might have caused the paranormal activity in the house. I created a story of who it might have been, and kind of an adventure of, me, my sister, my brother, kind of finding out maybe what it was that had happened in the house. And that's kind of a fun book that I wrote. When I was having one of my many surgeries, I decided to write another book. Because I had some requests for more of a lighthearted book on the paranormal for maybe a younger reader. So I said, well, okay, I'll write kind of a Goosebumps kind of book. So yeah, I wrote Secrets Buried in the Lemon Grove, and that came out a couple of years ago. And that one's also available at Amazon.
I think that's important too, to address more stories that would be appropriate for a younger group, because a lot of those kids are really tuned in. And then they're afraid to talk about it because their parents tell them, hey, don't tell people that you're seeing this or that you're having this experience.
They'll think you're crazy. They'll think we're all crazy. They'll put us away. And I've heard, from friends of mine who, have abilities, who are psychic, that there is a long history of, quote, mental illness in their family. Oh, my gosh, Aunt Bessie was hearing voices. Uncle Joe claimed that he talked to his dead wife all the time. And so these people were sometimes institutionalized because they were thought to be insane in older generations. And so the younger generation coming up, inheriting these gifts, are all of a sudden, reticent to explain it to their parents because their parents' eyes grow wide and like, oh, my gosh, my kid's crazy now because, Aunt Bessie heard voices too. And, so it's kind of a generational thing, and now we're just kind of getting to that level of acceptance that, yes, we are hearing these voices. Yes, we are seeing these things. Let us ask more questions and see if we can find more answers about what is really going on here.
Exactly. And as you brought up right from the beginning, this was a part of normal life for you. So you were able to integrate this a lot differently than other people who they have a kind of an experience of it being sprung on them, whether they move into a house that's haunted or onto a property that has a lot of activity, and they just don't know what to do. So you were kind of luckily groomed for this. So it looks like we have a caller with a question. So let me bring the caller on with us, and it's his area code 408, and let's see.
Phoenix.
Hi, what's your name?
Hey, my name is Craig. How you doing?
Good, Craig. Do you have a question for Kitty?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I have some mineral rights, and I was wondering if you had any insight about where they're at and what's going on with that.
You mean you have mineral rights and you don't know the location of these lands?
Yeah, I don't know the location. That a lot of people, when people are getting to the time where it's the end, I guess a lot of people gather around, and some of them aren't really, they don't have good intention. So there's things that happened that made it complicated for me to see what happened with that whole aspect of the mineral rights.
What area? What city? What area, honey?
Modesto, California.
Okay.
So you live in Modesto and you have rights and you don't know where that location is, or you're not sure if you're going to continue to have the rights to those mineral lands?
Well, everybody's deceased now, and I'm the only one that would be left. So, and other people have seemed to, they didn't communicate anything to me about the mineral rights, which I don't think other people knew about. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know where it's at. I know it's in Oklahoma somewhere, but I don't know exactly where it's at. So I can't go present it to anyone because I don't have any information.
You don't even have a name for it? Someone's name on that bead or
the family name.
Jack. I got that.
Jack.
Thinking of something here, George, when Richard's family was from Oklahoma, and there were some issues about mineral rights, and the county in the area, you'd have to check with them about by the name of and go back that direction to see what they can show you on that. See if that won't help you.
Yeah. I just don't know where. I don't know how to get. I really don't know how else to get any information from that whole thing as far as.
What area they lived and start checking there and move from there out.
I have no idea. I just know it's in Oklahoma. There was mineral rights that were passed down from generation to generation, and I know that this.
Don't you know where they lived in Oklahoma at all?
I don't. I know that there was a drilling company out there that was going down further, looking for the mother lode, if you will. And
what do you know the name of the drilling company? Because I would definitely either check with their records and the county records office and take your name, take your birth certificate if you can. Say here I am. I had family who lived here. The Historical Society can probably give you a lot of documentation on your family that lived there.
Right.
And then you could take that information to the county office and say, I am a blood descendant of these people. I've heard that I have some mineral rights here, and they could probably lead you in a better direction. Mm-hmm. Because it's more of a legal paperwork issue than I can come up with names or maybe a city, but it's not going to have a legal ground to stand on. You're going to have to get your birth certificate and go there, in person or through email, and it's going to have to be done through a paper trail.
Mm-hmm.
If there's money involved, it has to be done through a paper trail, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's kind of what I get from it. Since that question didn't go so well, I kind of knew what you were saying anyway. I just didn't know exactly which direction to go. So you gave me some ideas.
I think the Historical Society can actually give you a lot more information than you would think they would be able to.
Yeah, sounds good.
And one more thing, my girlfriend, I've been with childhood sweethearts. Her family member was murdered, and so was we believe that the daughter was too. And so I don't know. It's kind of an unsolved thing. I wonder if I could find anything out about that. Her cousin's name was Caroline.
Are they thinking that it might have been somebody that they knew?
I think
because I'm immediately picking up on that it was someone they knew, and so that's why.
Someone. That's what we believe, and someone was convicted.
Yeah, I don't think it was a family member. It was someone that they had a relationship with, and that there had been some violence in the past on that, but not nearly to the extent. The guys have a feeling that they already know who it is, but they just don't know how to go about following up on this person. But it was definitely somebody that she... Go ahead.
I think the person, they already convicted a person of the thing, but they just don't know how he did it, how it was done. I mean...
Well, if he was convicted, that should have told him something.
Yeah, he was convicted. It's just like we don't know if it was an accident or if he actually did it or not. He was convicted of doing it, but I don't know if it was an accident or if he actually did it.
What I'm
purpose.
picking up is it was done in a moment of rage. I mean, he kind of did it intentionally at the moment. He didn't mean to really kill him. But what I'm picking up is there was like a fight, there was a struggle, and in a moment of rage, it kind of happened.
That flash temper.
And unfortunately, he's paying the price for that moment for a long time now.
So I wonder about the people that were murdered, about them, and they're the ones that were taken from the natural realm into the spiritual realm. So I just wonder if those people are. Do you have anything about that?
If they're at peace, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
I am getting that they have crossed over. They are not together. One needed a little bit more healing on the other side, and that does occur if somebody suffered a traumatic death. Sometimes, spirit guides and angels do have to come forward and, do some healing of the soul so that they can actually, cross over fully in peace. But they are not together, and they're actually okay with that. They don't need to be together on the other side. They have gone their separate ways. But I am picking up that both of them have crossed over and are okay with it, if that brings you any solace.
Yeah, so the ones that cross over really don't want to come back over here, because over on the other side is where it's already perfect.
You can create your own heaven, whatever resonate with you, and have a heaven. Some people decide to be reincarnated. That's a whole, other conversation, and it's kind of up to that person. They can remain in a state. They can, travel on an earthly plane. They can visit us in a spirit form. They can, and time means nothing to them. It all is in how. That's also part of their healing. If they feel the need to, visit their loved ones here, to watch over them for a while, that is their option. Whether or not they decide to, I've had family members pass, and the instant they passed, I could feel they were completely on the other side of the universe. I mean, they just left this realm just at light speed, because they didn't need to stay here. They had finished whatever the work was on this planet, and they became part of the collective consciousness, as I like to put it, and went on to other things. So it's all in kind of how that person was raised, what their belief set is, if they needed healing based on how they left the physical body. But from what I'm picking up, they have not reincarnated yet. They are not necessarily visiting you in a spirit form. They're just basically in their own kind of mid-space right now. It's kind of developing their own type of heaven.
Greg, I'm going to have to wrap this up, okay?
They're in a light form.
Thank you so much for your call. Well, Kitty, thank you so much.
People always have tons of questions.
Yeah, they're very good questions.
And I could tell them, what I'm picking up. Some people might be picking up some other types of information, but for right off the people, they worry. What happened to them, especially if they were, sadly and tragically murdered. Are they okay?
Yes,
and
it is a
I
great
do have
concern.
Yeah, I do have stories of family members who unfortunately have passed unexpectedly, and sometimes it goes okay, sometimes it does not. And obviously, a lot of us have those questions. Are they all right?
Yeah, and also the question Craig asked, which was a good one, what really happened? I mean, was it on purpose? Was it premeditated? That all of people do end up with a lot of questions, and people pass that way. It's very difficult, very challenging.
Yeah. When a person passes unexpectedly, their age is not appropriate for them to be passing because there's been no illness or anything. Say a child or someone in mid-age or middle age. How do they respond to that major shift when it comes out of nowhere? There's been nothing to give them information prior to that they were going to be leaving that we're aware of.
Well, I am still on this side of the veil, So I can only give you the information that I have received, from those who have crossed and basically what I've been picking up. But people who die at a certain age, they like to remain in an age group that they were happiest. If they were happiest, if they died in their 40s, but unexpectedly in a car crash or something, but they were just in sheer bliss when they were in their 20s. That's kind of sometimes how they appear to their loved ones in that age group. They don't necessarily appear to their loved ones at the age of death. If someone happens to be a child, obviously they're going to kind of remain at that age group, although I have had stories of, there's a very famous spirit on the Queen Mary. I'll just go ahead and say it. And people who investigate there on a regular basis say that this particular spirit who represents itself as a child isn't necessarily a child. And I have had a 20-minute conversation with this spirit through, ITZ devices and whatnot, that this particular spirit is aware of time passing and that they are no longer of this age group and they no longer represent themselves of an age group. I basically told them, so you're the youngest one in the room. And I got a no response, even though the spirit supposedly died at like the age of 8. So they're aware of the time passing, but I think to answer your question, I think a lot of people who pass, they revert back to an age group where they were happiest. Because really, if you can be young again, if you can be your most beautiful again, and it's depicted in Hollywood too. My favorite movie is The Ghost of Mrs. Muir.
Yes, definitely.
When Jane Tierney, drops her glass of milk, and he comes to greet her, which is, in my mind, is like the most romantic movie ever. Just putting that out there. And all of a sudden, she's just in her stunning, perfection again, because that's how she's going to be through eternity. And he lifts her up, and they walk off into the mist, and they're both of their happiest age group. And I think there actually is a lot of validity to that closing moment in The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. She's not her old wrinkled self. She is suddenly her youthful, beautiful self again. And he goes to greet her, and I'm like, oh, he's there for her. He waited for her. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just like the most romantic movie ever.
Definitely a feel.
Just love that movie.
Kitty, do you ever find yourself going on go ahead.
No, go. You go, George.
Well, I was just going to say that. Do you ever go on investigations where, I'm sure you have your own way of approaching it scientifically and spiritually, and you go into a house that is haunted. Maybe it might not even be someone invited you to one, but when you walk into a house, it's got a vibe, and it's almost like, whoops, there goes gravity. You know what I mean? It's like you feel that lightness. You feel that it's like a heavy light feeling. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's just you just know something, like you're walking through or into residual energy, and you can feel it, and then you have the tools to measure it and that kind of thing, or actually speak with it and it speak to you back. You ever get that kind of feeling of that?
Oh, definitely, and that is a strong basis for my book. Is I use the equipment to validate what I'm already picking up with my own body, because your own body is basically one of the best tools in your toolkit to be a paranormal investigator. Yeah. And if you walk into a house, a lot of times you'll get what I call a funhouse effect, where the energy is so strong that you find yourself almost pinned against the wall, and sliding against the wall as you go through a room because you're struggling to maintain your balance. I also will tell people, if you go into a room and it feels like somebody had just had an argument in there, and you could feel that kinetic energy still in that room, and all the hair is standing up on your arms and stuff. I mean, that will tell you that there is something in that room. And I'll do a quick sweep, through an area. Something might feel, this room feels nothing, this feels active, and then I'll switch. Sometimes the energy will change in a room too. It's like if you sit there quiet for a few minutes, that energy may rise up again, and it'll feel a little bit different. But I get what's called a funhouse effect. And you'll go into a place and you're like, oh my gosh, and you can't even maintain your balance. You feel like lightheaded and wobbly. Yeah.
Yep. What about the spirit box? When you use that, how does that affect you?
I use that usually towards an end of an investigation. If I've already reached out and connected with some spirit, and I think something is still there, and maybe you want to have a lengthier conversation, because I've been able to get full sentence out of a SB7 spirit box, which is basically something that sweeps the bands, and it creates a kind of white noise. If people aren't familiar with what the SB7 spirit box does, so you'll have to discount little blips of words every now and then, because sometimes those will pop through. So a lot of times I'll do the sweep backwards, so I don't accidentally get random words popping in that might be from a different radio band. And I think one of the most remarkable ones I got was at a house that is in Hollywood, and it was on the same street as the Tate LaBianca murders.
Oh,
and nice. The spirit of Sharon Tate has been known to frequent this house quite a bit. The house has been on a lot of TV programs, and it's known as the Omen House. And my friend Dave Omen owns this house, and that is one of those places where you definitely get that funhouse effect. I mean, you will get a high positive milligauss setting on the top floor, and on the bottom floor, it's like 1,000 negative milligauss. I mean, it's just the magnetic anomalies that exist in this house are just absolutely crazy. And we were there with a spirit box one time, and once again, I'm using these pieces of equipment to validate what I'm already kind of picking up mentally. So somebody was asking if Sharon Tate could come forward, and we're not getting much of a response. And I'm getting the voice in my head that there are other spirits suppressing her from coming forward. And I vocalize this, and it's on a recording. I think I have it on my SoundCloud page. You can go to my website and hear this kind of whole conversation, because somebody's asking, Sharon, can you speak with this? And I say, I don't think they want her to speak, or something to that effect. And just then, over the course of like 10 bandwidths, is a full sentence in a female voice that says, can't, they won't let me. So here I'm getting validation from what I've already been picking up, psychically, that they don't want her to come forward at that time. And then all of a sudden we get this voice that says, can't, they won't let me. So
and who is
I
they?
do like it. I think it's other spirits that are in that vicinity. Sometimes there are, quote, bullying spirits that won't want other ones to come forward. There's spirits that they're control freaks on that side, just as there are people on this side. And sometimes you have to push those other bullying spirits out of the way for other spirits to come forward. But as far as the SB7 spirit box, you can get a lot of inflection. You can get accents, and that's what it's really good for, because you actually do get the voice, coming through in real time. So those are really cool to get a lot of the tone and inflection and emotion of a spirit coming through in those devices.
Can you pick up anything from her, possibly, of the unborn child? Because that child was due about the time she was murdered, wasn't it?
Yeah, she was like 9 months pregnant.
Yeah,
at the time.
Was there anything picked up of the child itself?
I personally have not on my many visits to that house. I think when a child is that close to term and has taken that suddenly, that as I had another investigator friend of mine say, that the angels take them home.
Okay.
They
will
not be put in a position to be in some sort of purgatory and have to make those, cognitive decisions of where am I, what do I need to do.
Yeah.
It is so traumatic, and it forces, we like to call them angels, come and take them where they need to be. They don't have to make those decisions of where do I go, is somebody looking for me. they aren't put in a position of being lost.
That's wonderful.
Angels come and take them where they need to be. So no, there was no issue that I have encountered of her child being in any kind of purgatory, or I have not encountered the child spirit at that house at all, thankfully.
That's very comforting.
So, definitely. Anytime things happen and you wonder what does happen with the child, so that's good to know.
It is.
Now, I do have an interesting story of trying to channel a child spirit, if we have time to tell that quick story.
Yeah, but we're going to do first, though, Kitty, we're going to take a very short commercial break. So everybody stay tuned. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio, and we'll be right back.
Pure essential oils, specialized minerals, and a revolutionary anti-aging technology. Astridian combines the best of all scientifically proven ingredients in easy-to-use creams, lotions, and concentrated serums. Astridian's advanced line of products take your skin to a new level of being healthy and beautiful. We offer a variety of collections that address all your skin concerns. The Essential Anti-Aging Series treats and moisturizes your skin for a long-lasting, younger look. The Multivitamin Series promotes healthy skin with high-quality vitamins and minerals. The Sports Series restores skin from cellular damage and stress. Astridian also offers a revitalizing solution for hair and a professional series for doctors and medical spas. Visit astridian.love today and begin your new journey to healthy, beautiful, youthful skin. Astridian, beyond your expectations.
There are a lot of psychics out there. How do you decide which one is right for you? You look for someone who empowers you, who's practical and spiritually connected, who says, here are your opportunities, here are your challenges, and here's a way to deal with them, and then gives you your own toolbox to make your life everything you want it to be. Hi, I'm Corby Mitleid, and that's how I work with you. As a certified professional tarot reader, I've helped thousands of people for over 40 years through my toolbox. Cards, past life retrieval, numerology, spirit guide conferences, and mediumship. Whether it's career, relationships, finances, or your spiritual road, together we can replace your confusion with clarity. And you'll probably find a little laughter along the way. Visit me at CorbyMitleid.com to find out how to cross your bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. And tell me you found me at Supernatural Girls for a special gift with your reading. Corby Mitleid, the practical psychic for catching your tomorrows today. Find me at CorbyMitleid.com. That's CorbyMitleid.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Are you frustrated with endless mantras, affirmations, and processes that promise to align your life with your dreams, only to find yourself years later in the same space where you began? Do you feel like you must be doing something wrong because nothing seems to be working? Don't you just wish that someone could shift your consciousness for you and your life could align with your desires without all the effort? Well, your wish is about to come true. Hi, I'm Carrie Cannon, and I have a gift that allows me to align the consciousness of others to be in harmony with their dreams. The best part is, it requires no particular effort on your part. Upon listening to a consciousness alignment, people have reported instant energy shifts, financial windfalls, soulmate connections, healed relationships, physical healings, and more. To gain access to a free trial offer for my entire Manifesting Miracles library of consciousness alignments, go to commandmiracles.com now for details. Again, that's commandmiracles.com for information about our free trial offer. That's commandmiracles.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, here with my two co-hosts, PK and George Lugo, and our wonderful guest tonight, Kitty Janusz. We are speaking with her about her adventures in this world and the other side. And her wonderful book is called When the Dead Speak. So, Kitty, we broke just when you were about to share a story with us about channeling a child. So please continue.
Well, I like this story because not only does it validate that spirits are okay, our loved ones are watching over them, they also do cross over, but also I did this reading with the help of a couple other mediums in the same room, and so I always learn so much when I'm channeling with other mediums at the same time. And George, I don't know if you've done like group channelings as well, because a lot of times you'll get different perspectives of what's going on, and right. I always learn so much when I'm doing this rather than just either doing it over the phone or doing it by myself. I love doing group channeling readings, and this young mother came in who had lost, sadly, a 5-year-old son. And
wow,
she had now had another son who was born, and he was also now 5, but she wanted to connect with the son who had passed over. And so I'm in the room with about 3 or 4 other, mediums, and I get this vision of, a maternal, grandmotherly figure, but all I'm seeing are her hands holding just a small child's hands, and I'm not seeing the boy. I'm just seeing a pair of hands resting in hers. She's gently clutching this pair of hands. I'm thinking, why am I not getting anything other than the child's hands? And so I question, this other, my mentor, my other friend, and I said, why am I only just no, another friend of mine, Kimberly.
Oh.
And I said, why am I only just seeing the hands? She says, that's because, and this was her interpretation, and I have to kind of go along with this, that who this young boy was, he no longer needed to remain. He has crossed over and reincarnated. But who this young boy was, who this child was to this young mother, still remains under the care of the grandmother. And the only visual that we see are just his hands being held in hers out of love. So just this little fragment of that consciousness that was the boy, who he was by name, still remains with the grandmother, but the rest of his soul has gone over and reincarnated. And so I shared that with the mother, and she got some comfort from that. And as I'm looking at the mother, I get this overlay of another visual, and I'm looking at her, and it looks like flies buzzing around her. And I'm thinking, that can't be good. Why am I seeing weird, and they're weird little, not normal-looking bugs flying around her on this overlay. Obviously, they're not, she doesn't have flies buzzing around her, but I'm seeing it as a vision, as an overlay on her, and I'm thinking, how do I articulate this that doesn't just sound totally negative and creepy? Because obviously it's a message that I need to relay to her, and I'm not quite sure what this message is. So I don't say flies, I don't say bugs, I say, what's with the bees? Because bees sound better. I said, yes. I'm getting this vision of like bees or insects. And then at the same time as I'm getting this visual, I'm getting, auditory information in my head that the deceased child is somehow bringing these insects to her, that this is a message from the son to the mother. And I go, so are you seeing insects or bugs in an unnatural or unusual place, or I'm getting this image that the sun is somehow bringing these odd little insects to you. Are you seeing insects in a place that you hadn't seen them before? Her eyes are just getting really big like saucers. And I said, does this make sense to you? Because it's not making complete sense to me right now. But I'm being told that I need to tell you that somehow the sun is bringing you insects. And she says, the sun who passed always used to draw little bugs for me.
Oh, my.
And she says, now the sun I have now has started drawing insects in exactly the same way.
Oh, my.
Just like the draw. And I'm getting goosebumps telling the story because how the tears just started pouring out of her and how it made perfect sense to her, even though it didn't make any sense to me seeing this overlay of flies buzzing around her. But that's just how it presented itself. And it was making perfect sense to her because she says, I get it now because the sun that I have now is drawing these same insects, and they look just like the ones that, my other son used to draw for me. And I said, the son who has passed that's his message, and he's coming through the sun that you have now. And, of course, tears are flowing, like crazy because that message made perfect sense to her. So I tell, mediums, even though they're getting some weird, obscure piece of information, tell them, I'm getting this weird, obscure piece of information, but I'm being told that it should make sense to you. So rather than try to fabricate, I'm seeing insects and blah, try to fabricate something, say, this is what I'm getting, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm told it's important to you. Does this make sense to you? And I think that will give a lot of credence to some people where I think, oh, they're a fake because they're just doing a cold reading. I'm just saying, this is what I'm getting. This is the information I was getting. Does it make sense to you? And it made perfect sense to this mother. So it kind of helped me a lot because I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on, seeing this overlay of flies buzzing around this poor grieving mother. But it was actually a gift from her, deceased son, and to be able to kind of validate that message for her, I think was really, really sweet. And I kind of had to, navigate a little bit through this with a little bit of help, but the reading came through quite well for the mom because the tears were flowing. She was so happy, and she knew that seeing her son make these drawings was actually a gift from her deceased son. So it was kind of a cool story in its way, but it's, like I said, it didn't make any sense to me at the time until I said, Mom, I'm seeing this.
But that is,
what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that is so true. Like when I'm doing a reading, these abstract things will come in, a tricycle with a red ball on it, and they're just keep showing it to me, and I kind of ignore it sometimes because I want it to be a little bit more clear or, and if you don't say it, they stop talking to you. Sometimes they'll just like back out, say, okay, he's not getting it, so they leave. And so I have to present this abstract thought. It makes no sense to me, but to the person I'm reading for, it makes total sense for them. And it ties it all together. And there have been times in the beginning of a reading where I'll get these abstract things, but I continue to read because there's a lot of souls there, and they're all saying different things, and all of a sudden the whole thing comes around full circle, and it's back to that abstract thought, and it ties the whole thing together. So I don't know if you got it like that sometimes, but, yeah, the abstract part of it is really important. It validates a lot of things. So important to listen to that.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of times the spirit will keep pushing that, what you see as an abstract image that not make any sense. And if you do ignore it, I'm out of here because they aren't listening to me. So, yeah, a lot of times they say, he's telling me this. If it doesn't make sense now, maybe we'll set it aside, but that's just something he's pushing at me right now. Maybe it'll make sense in a few minutes or so, or maybe a couple days later, something will come to fruition. Oh, my gosh, that's, he said don't go up those stairs, and all of a sudden, I slipped and fell, and I was going to break my hip or something. It makes sense, maybe a couple days later. So, yeah, I never try to ignore those things, but they don't, people say, well, why can't you just tell me how a person died, or why can't you just tell me how he's doing? And it's not that easy. The deceased don't always just sit down in a chair and have a straight conversation with you. Some of it is filtered. Some of it comes through spirit guides. Some of it comes through images. Some of it comes through different layers of different spirits all trying to talk at once, and you're trying to navigate, did this person say this, and why does this person look like this, and I'm seeing somebody with red hair, but it's actually this person, and, you're seeing, slices of many different things, and as a medium, you're trying to make sense of it, and so a lot of times you're putting out pieces of information, and people say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like, well, I'm just getting all these little bits of information, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And it's not as easy as people think it is.
Like
so I totally get you that you're getting these weird images, and I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, but this is what he's pushing at me right now. It makes sense to them. Does it make sense to you, kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword sometimes. Go ahead.
Kitty. About
yes.
the trans channel that you spoke of in the book, when standing next to someone and not when you're reading for them or reading with them a spirit, how do you navigate that to be able to keep it in a balance?
It all comes down to having healthy personal boundaries. I had a person who would allow spirits to come into her, and I think that's just way too invasive, and especially if you're doing a channeling of a person who has died a traumatic death. I had a person email me just the other day who just did a spontaneous reading for a friend. He had never done a reading before, and he started feeling the moments of death for that person's lost loved one, and that can be very dangerous. It can be very painful. It can be very frightening.
Yep.
And so I tell people, tell the spirits. It's okay to tell the spirit, we can have this conversation, next to each other. You don't, sometimes they may need to think that, you need to feel my pain to, know what it is I was going through. No, you can tell me what it is. I know what you went through. Mm-hmm. I had a person whose brother died in a motorcycle accident. He didn't tell me he died in a motorcycle accident. I had once again, we were doing a channeling with a couple other people in the room. Somebody felt her legs breaking. She actually felt her legs breaking because that's what happened to the gentleman who died in the motorcycle accident. I was feeling the chest trauma. I mean, it's a matter of personal boundaries as a medium, because you don't want to have any of that lingering within you, because not only is it bad for your health, it's also kind of muddies the water, so to speak, for your next channeling, because it kind of confuses you. Why am I feeling all these other emotions, pain,
that's interesting,
and whatnot? It's really about personal safety, I would think, and it's also about clarity.
Well, about Jane Roberts,
to have
right?
something come into you.
She channeled the stuff material. Are you familiar with that? Years ago.
Yeah, a little bit. Refresh my memory on that.
Yeah, I mean, she had this entity named Seth that would come through her regularly, wanted to write books, and so they did put out a number of books under the Seth material. But I know somebody who knew her, and they said that as time went on, she did develop some serious health problems, and they felt it was connected to the channeling.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and you probably have these experiences too, George, that after you've done a reading, sometimes you can feel completely drained. You feel what that person went through. And it's like, I sometimes you want to feel that because you want that visceral experience to validate, yes, I am connecting with this spirit, and yes, I want to shoulder a little bit of that burden from them in order to help them to heal. And sometimes I will allow a little bit of it just to verify what it is that person went through to make that connection. But then I always will make a conscious effort to flush it away, either through meditation or through Reiki. I think meditation is a tool that is really underutilized in the paranormal world. It really does help people with a razor-sharp focus, which I think is something that people really do need in this field. Everything can get really confusing really quick. When you're dealing with the living, you're dealing with the dead, you're dealing with residual energy, you're dealing with trauma. I think that's what's really important, is to have these personal boundaries in order to maintain, a level of safety. And
right.
I think you probably have encountered, people who've been in the paranormal field many years that they do sometimes develop personality changes. They'll start developing bits of depression. There'll be
or chronic illnesses.
Chronic illnesses.
Right. True.
They'll be called back to more negative locations. It can become somewhat of an addiction in that respect. And so people say, well, why didn't you write this book more about equipment? Why didn't you write more about the practical aspects of an investigation? And I said, well, a lot of people have already. A lot of people have written very good books on that subject. I have found that dealing with paranormal investigators and dealing with this type of energy, that what was not being addressed was the idea of personal boundaries, dealing with this energy, dealing with this layering of soot, of negativity and emotion that can just kind of clog on you year after year after year. And if you don't address it, if you don't cleanse yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, it can have really, really dire effects over the long term. And I found that was just not being addressed in the paranormal field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It really hasn't been. And I agree, too, about your point that meditation needs to be a more integrated part of all of this so that people can get clear faster, because it's easy to get overwhelmed when you're doing an investigation, or even when you're doing a reading sometime if someone's traveling with a lot of companions. So it is important.
I noticed also that I was interested in reading in your book, Kitty, was the fact that you were talking about Reiki. I'm a Reiki Master, and I use it for healing and working with other aspects of things. But I had not really thought of it in the terms of which you have used it in the book, and I think that's very interesting to know that there's so much more that goes with it, because we forget sometimes to think strictly the healing element of the body and mind, but not of what is going on within the ethers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I learned Reiki after I became a paranormal investigator, because over the years, it's a field where you get so much answers, but you just get more questions. And I think I tell people that kind of the epiphanal moment of a lot of this is I was attending a lecture by a gentleman who works as a demonologist. You've probably heard him. His name is Adam Bly.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he was saying that I am so angry when I see people go into these investigations and they get these EVPs of somebody, saying, help me, or I'm lost, and they go, oh my gosh, I got this cool EVP of somebody saying, help me. And they put it on their YouTube page and they put it on their website. He goes, this is like poking a spirit with a stick. He goes, these are not little trick ponies. He goes, what is your responsibility now that you have connected with somebody who has gone to all these lengths of crossing time and space and parallel universe to reach out and ask for help? He says, so what are you going to do? How are you going to help this person? What is the point of being an investigator if you get this evidence of somebody saying, help me, so to speak? How are you going to help them? And, the light bulb kind of went off at that point. Oh, how am I going to help them? Rather than just collect this evidence and saying, yeah, I got a voice that says, help me, ha-ha. What I need as a responsibility as a paranormal investigator to be able to kind of find something in my toolbox to be able to help these spirits, be it have them cross over, have them get some sort of healing. Sometimes they just want a connection and have a conversation just so that they're not, forgotten where they are. And so that's why I, learned Reiki. And so Reiki can actually be used to heal locations. It can actually be used in healing of the deceased. I had a conversation with a coworker today of how when we are deceased, we don't automatically go onto a fluffy cloud and get a pair of wings and start playing a harp. a lot of times there is unfinished business. And this is where things like Reiki and mediumship come into play, is because you can actually reach through that veil. And, George, I don't know if you've done this or not, but actually done healing to the deceased.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing to have in your toolbox. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the deceased are surprised that you can cross that veil and reach them and do this type of healing.
I'm pleased to know that's possible. I didn't realize it before. I don't know why.
It's a wonderful thing to have. And I'm going to cough here in a second. Excuse me. But yeah, it's really a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. And you were saying that you were using alternative medicines for your dog.
Yes.
I had a cat who I'd had for many, many years, and he developed thyroid cancer. And at the time, he was about 14, and he was not exactly the friendliest cat to other people. He was to me, but not to anyone else. My vet hated him. And my vet said, let's put it this way, your cat is not exactly Mr. Cuddles, and I can't do chemo on him. I can't put a needle in him. If he struggles, we'll shred tissue. There's really no way I can treat this cat, especially given his age. There's nothing I can do. So I took my cat home, and I'm like, what am I going to do? He's my everything. He's my world. Okay, well, I've done Reiki. I've done Reiki to humans. I've done Reiki for emotional trauma. I've done it for physical trauma. I hadn't done it a lot to pets at that time. So I laid on the bed on my back. I put my cat on my stomach, and I just started doing, Reiki on him. I'd done a little bit of Reiki on him during his cancer, but not to the extent where I need to make this really work. And I just laid my hands above him, and I was, feeling his energy. I was pulling out the negative stuff. I was trying to balance him out. And I just said out loud, I said, if there is a God, if there's a force, if there's something out there, you need to give me that validation that this is going to work, because, this is Scout, this is my cat, he needs to survive this, and this is the only way that he is going to survive this cancer if this universal energy, if this Reiki actually does what I have been taught that it's going to do. And at that moment, I felt a second pair of hands rest on the back of my hands.
Oh, my.
And
how nice.
I'm crying right now. The tears start flowing from me as I did this Reiki on my cat. And that was when he was 14. He just passed away at the age of 22.
Oh, my goodness.
Congratulations.
Wow.
So I really
fabulous.
Got that validation when I needed it most. And I think that made it all worthwhile for me, was when I needed it most, I got that validation that there really is something out there that listens to us and gives us what we need when we need it. I mean, I did it as selflessly as I could. It wasn't for me, even though I needed the validation. I just needed the Reiki to heal my cat. And he was completely cancer-free until he passed at the age of 22. A crunchy
long
cat.
Life. Even for a cat, that's a long life. Did he get the Golden Mouse Award for that? So as heartbreaking a story as that is, it really hit home with me that they hear us out there, and they will come to us when we need it. They will definitely. Thank you for that word. They will assist when we need it.
That's wonderful.
When you shared that, Kitty, what I was struck with is just how everything lined up in your own energy system to focus on Scout, to focus on his healing. Because I think what happens for most people who don't meditate, who don't know how to align themselves, they have a lot of doubts. And it takes out of alignment into a different direction, it's very difficult to reach the right frequency to create a healing like you had. So good for you. That's tremendous that you were able to do that.
Oh, thank you. And I like that you brought up that word doubt, because a lot of people, they get these visitations, or they have an experience and they think, okay, this is really happening, or I had this spontaneous, channeling with somebody. But if they don't, train themselves, if they don't train their bodies, they don't train their mind, it becomes a bit more fragmented. And then they do start questioning, did this really happen, or was that really real, or was it more of a dream? And so that's why I can't reiterate enough. Yeah, so I can't really reiterate enough that meditation is a wonderful tool to help you focus, because in everything that we're doing here, if we're doing meditation, if we're doing mediumship, if we're doing paranormal investigations, if we're doing numerology, if we're doing astrology, it really is dealing with an energy that is bigger than ourselves. And so I think in order to tap into that, I really recommend, meditation to really help kind of focus on not only raising our vibration and training our body, but it also helps to identify certain levels of energy, if that makes sense. So when you go into, say, a haunted location, you can pinpoint, is this an active location, or is this something more residual? Is this something more negative? Is this something more elemental? It really kind of helps you gauge the intention of the energy when you walk into an area. And so it's a wonderful tool to have.
Yeah, tell us about the stone stamps and water. You had some really interesting things to say about that stone energy and the water energy. Well,
we're from our high school science class, we're 70% water. So if you go to places that are haunted, a lot of times they are near water, be it, say, the Queen Mary, be it something next to a river, and there's a lot of kinetic energy associated with this water. It's constantly moving, and so it retains a lot of this energy as it's flowing along. And there is a study by a gentleman, Dr. Masaru Emoto, called Messages in Water. And it's a fascinating book if you ever get your hands on it. And what he did was he took drops of water from different sources: sewer water, river water, rainwater, tap water, tears, sweat, all different sources of water. And he put them on, little slides. And then he subjected these inert little drops of water to different types of energy. In some, he played classical music. In some, he put in a room where people would meditate. In some, he would put in a room and he'd have people, screaming and arguing and shouting. In some, he would, I think they even had where they would read like horrible novels like Mein Kampf, or just really horrific words would be read in the room where these drops of water were. And then, in other ones they would sing, hymns. In other ones they would pray. They would do all these different things to these drops of water. Then he'd freeze these little drops of water. Then he'd pull them out, and he would study the crystal formations that were formed. And what was fascinating was, in every single time he did this, the drops of water that were subjected to positive energies created beautiful, uniform crystals, whether it be the prayer, whether it be the meditation, whether it be the song, whether it be just loving thoughts, were all beautiful and uniform, regardless of the source of the water. The ones that were subjected to anything negative were dark, they were fragmented, they were broken, and they were, for lack of better words, completely ugly and deformed. So he goes, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's make this a bit more abstract. He took different sources of water again, new batch, put them on the little dishes, and rather than energetically portraying either positive or negative, he put them in little jars, and he would just have masking tape on there and have someone write the word love, hate, anger, prayer, beauty. Just the word. Freeze the drops of water. Pulled them out. Had the same results. Just the intention of the word itself was enough to affect the crystal formation of these drops of water.
So with us being 70% water, then the same thing
Think of what happens in a conversation when somebody is arguing with you. If someone is saying how much they love you, if they say how much they respect you, of how they admire you, how is that physically affecting that 70% of fluid within you? I mean, it really has a biochemical change in your body. So that is just dealing with the living. If you're going into, it carries over into, a haunted location, or dealing with a channeling of someone who has died a traumatic death, that will physically affect you. But it's just a fascinating study of how much we are affected physically just by the thoughts, either negative or positive. And I think
that ghosts can have that same effect on our water bodies, even though they don't have the body anymore. You think they can have a similar effect on us?
I think they are drawn to the energy, and I've definitely had physical attacks through entities, be they elemental or be they just negative spirits, and they will generally go at you through your solar plexus, because that is, your area of self-protection. And that's a lot of times when people are at a location, oh my gosh, I'm feeling sick, I'm feeling nauseous, I feel like I'm going to throw up, because that is where they actually start. And once they leave that location, they get a little bit of air, they get out of that energetic space, they're cleared. So always, on more than one occasion, I've had somebody get attacked. I get them out of that location, and I will stand in that exact spot and see what I'm feeling. And sure enough, you'll start feeling that little kind of queasy tickle in your midsection and your solar plexus. And I'm just like, yeah, no, we're not going to go there. You're not coming into me. You're not going to take my energy. Step back, buddy.
Right.
And yeah, that's how they'll try to get at you, is through your midsection. They'll either try to manipulate you, they'll try to attack you, they'll try to just suck your energy out, and they usually go through your midsection. And a lot of times people will start feeling a little bit nauseous when that starts to happen.
I bet. It sounds very uncomfortable.
I mean, haven't you guys experienced that, like on a location or something? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to feel sick. I need to get out. I need to get some air. I'm doubling over. I'm going to puke or something like that. Definitely. Mm-hmm. That is when those energies start coming in at you. Be it, a spirit, or be something, elemental, something that hasn't really walked the earth in, human form.
George, you were going to ask a question?
Oh, no, I was just going to tell you about something that happened that I was involved with. This group investigating team, I didn't know them, and they invited me to go on a hunt with them, and so I went on an investigation with them. So I'm sitting in the room, and there's a lot of us there, and they had what's the little box that they can talk through? Not a vocoder. It's called
like an ovilus?
Yeah, they had an ovilus sitting there, and this voice comes through. It says, Zach. And all these people were like getting ready to go and investigate this house. So they're all in this living room getting their equipment ready and all this. And somebody said, Zach's not here. And then they said, Zach again. And the lead investigator said, Zach's not here. So I must have said it 2 or 3 more times. So then I finally asked, after the whole thing was over, I said, hey, this ovilus was saying, Zach, who's Zach? And they go, oh, Zach used to hunt with us and investigate with us. And a lot. And this one time he left here, And when he got here, he didn't protect himself. So when he left here, he had about an hour and a half drive to get home. So he goes home, he goes in his bedroom, the lights are off, very dim. His girlfriend's asleep in bed, and he sits on the side of the bed to take off his boots and stuff, and all of a sudden she comes flying over the top of him and just slammed on the floor. She's screaming and yelling. She was dead asleep. And he's grabbing at nothing, telling it to stop, all this, and it finally did. And when it stopped, she was full of teeth marks all over her thighs, her back, scratches. She was just torn all up. And so she just gave him the ultimatum. She said, if you don't stop doing this, I'm leaving, and so he quit, and that's why he didn't show up anymore. But things can follow you home. In this particular thing, I just thought, holy cow, man, what am I doing here? So that's why I always say before I go into a haunted place, man, I came here alone, I'm leaving alone, and nothing go home with me. So, but she really got hurt.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible.
Have you ever been attacked like that? You ever been attacked?
I don't allow things to come home with me.
Neither do I.
As far as being attacked, I've been kind of pushed. I've almost been pushed downstairs. I think one of the funniest ones was I was doing a psychometry demonstration. And one of the coolest places I found to do this was there was a Titanic exhibit in town with a lot of the artifacts that had come up from the Titanic. So I brought a group of people basically into this little museum to show them how you can read, the energy off of these objects without actually having to hold them in your hand because it's a museum. And in the first room, there is nothing in there but this little case with like a big bolt, and it's the intro to this museum. And we arranged to be like the only ones basically on this tour so we could do this demonstration. So there's about 10 people with me, probably more, I don't know, and the security guard. And the security guard is standing way off in the corner. And so we start talking about what psychometry is, and it's standing over this little bolt. And all of a sudden, I get a double-fisted butt-cheek goose. And I wheel around assuming it has to be the security guard or somebody behind me, and he's standing 20 feet behind me off in the corner.
Oops.
And my eyes are just popping out, and everybody's like, what? And I'm like, I just got kind of goosed by a sailor kind of person, I guess. I don't know, somebody off the Titanic. But, I got a double-fisted, let me know he was there. That kind of took me by surprise, and I just kind of laughed it off because it really wasn't that invasive. It was kind of funny.
But Kitty, we have to wrap up. We've only got another couple of minutes left, unfortunately.
Sure.
Love talking with you.
It's just been too much fun.
I know. This is too much fun, and it's great having you with us. I want people to know how to get a hold of you. What is the best way for them to find you?
They can find me on Twitter. I go under Paranormal Kitty, or Kitty_Janusz is how it appears. They can find me on my Facebook page at Into the Light Paranormal. They can find my website at Kitty Janusz, that's KittyJanusz.com, where you can find links to my podcast, my evidence. You can hear some of my EVPs. You can find links to my store where I sell my books and crystals and a few other things. My books are also available on Amazon and Kindle. The one paranormal book is When the Dead Speak, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation. And I also have the younger reader's book, When Secrets Buried in the Lemon Grove. And right now I'm working on a third book on grief and mourning and how we re-identify ourselves after experiencing a loss. But you can reach me through my Twitter, my Facebook, and my website, all on those sites. Terrific. And I'd love to hear from any of you guys.
Yes. Well, we have to get back in touch when you've got your next book ready so that we can talk with you again, Kitty. Thank you so much for such a great interview tonight. Wealth of information.
Oh.
You obviously know what you're talking about. It's wonderful to have you with us tonight. Now, next week, everybody, we're going to be back with another great show. It's going to be a little different. My two co-hosts are going to interview me about a great UFO abduction story, one of the very best, Colors in the Dark. Don't miss it. Until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Kitty. Nice to meet you.
Oh, it was good talking to you.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girl.